So we've been talking about this IRS weaponization, the weaponization of the Securities and Exchange Commission, and how the United States Congress and the President of the United States are engaged in out of control spending. All of those things are true. Okay. All of those things are true. Some states are pushing back because they're so concerned about the value of the US dollar that they are introducing and passing bills to prepare for the worst. Okay. I don't want to say to you podcast listeners that the worst is going to happen, but let's face it, any adult who is a critical thinker always prepares for the worst. How do you prepare for the worst? Well, you don't just save money and put money away, but you also put it in places where you think are really safe. Well, what is a safe place to put money? Where is a safe place to put money? The bank, I'm sure you're saying the bank, of course. Stocks and bonds, maybe depending on the market situation. Gold, silver, platinum. Well, get this. Arizona has passed House Bill 2014. That's the bill number. Arizona's HB 2014 bolsters residents' ability to use precious metals to diversify away from paper currency. And it paves the way for the use of gold and silver as currency and essentially acknowledges that precious metals can work as a hedge against inflation. As Representative Mark Fincham, Republican, points out in the Arizona Capitol Times, the bill reflects the belief that the purchase of gold and silver coins with Federal Reserve notes, those dollar bills now printed by the government, is simply an exchange of one form of currency for another. To tax this exchange would be like taxing someone for exchanging 2 dimes and a nickel for a quarter. What you're doing here, the way I understand it is, quote, is maybe we ought to not tax money, asserts former Congressman and presidential candidate Ron Paul. And I think that's a good idea. I like to not tax a lot of things, but certainly it makes no sense to tax money. For example, if someone buys a 1-ounce gold American Eagle coin selling for $1,300 one year and sells it at a future date for a higher figure, that person has not experienced a capital gain, argues Fincham, since it's the government-issued dollar bills that have dropped in buying power. Arizona's new law will go into effect August 9th, 2017, and residents holding U.S. gold and silver coins and selling it for more than its original cost will no longer be subject to state income taxes. That's huge. So as a result of not taxing the buying and selling of gold, whether it be capital gains taxes or whether it be sales taxes, it's not taxed whatsoever. As a result of not taxing precious metals, now you can hold those precious metals in a safe at your house or in a safety deposit box at the bank or the post office, I suppose. And you can use that to exchange, buy, and sell things. So you buy something, you can pay with gold coins or silver coins or platinum coins. You sell something, you can also receive those coins. And no longer will you be taxed on those coins, which of course, when you think about it, makes no sense because these states, what they're doing is they're putting these bills in because they fundamentally don't trust the federal government to do the right thing. All the more reason why we need a convention of states, right, Chris?
Absolutely.
So get this, Idaho, House Bill 206. Similar to Arizona's House Bill 2014, Idaho's House Bill 206 expands existing sales tax exemptions, meaning you don't pay sales tax, and it ends the state income tax on the sales of precious metals, bullion, and monetized bullion. So in other words, you don't pay sales tax and you don't pay income tax when you use precious metals or when you sell precious metals. Quote, gold and silver is an alternative to holding Federal Reserve notes, and it is the only alternative that the U.S. Constitution says that the state can allow as another currency. It's unfair to tax it, just as it's unfair to tax losses on Federal Reserve notes, says Representative Ron Nate of Idaho. The Idaho House passed House Bill 206 and now awaits Senate and governor approval as of March 15th of 2017. Now, I know we're in 2021, but all of these bills are progressing faster and faster across many states. If passed, House Bill 206 will pave the way for residents of Idaho to use gold and silver as an additional means of protecting their savings against potential devaluation of the American dollar. In Texas, ladies and gentlemen, House Bill 78, House Bill 483, Senate Bill 2097. Texas appears to be a champion for sound money laws, with multiple pieces of legislation already passed and others in the works. Effective October of 2013, House Bill 78 eliminated the sales tax on gold and silver and precious metals. In 2015, Governor Abbott signed House Bill 483, authorizing the establishment and administration of a state bullion depository. Imagine that. We've always had federal bullion depositories, but Texas wants their own. Only in Texas. Don't mess with Texas. 2 years later, the governor announced that the Lone Star Tangible Assets would be the private vendor tasked with building and operating the Texas Bullion Depository. But Texas isn't done yet. In 2017, Senator Bob Hall introduced Senate Bill 2097, which would establish gold and silver as legal tender in the state, prohibit the state from seizing individual holdings of precious metals, and eliminate any tax, charge, or penalty on any exchange of federal notes, dollars that is, for gold and silver. So you have dollars, you want to buy silver and gold, there's no tax on that silver and gold when you pay dollars to the person from whom you're buying the gold and silver. The passage of SB 2097 would create currency competition and reduce residents' reliance on paper assets. Imagine that. Currency competition. When was the last time you heard that term in the United States where there was a growing movement, not just by individuals, but by states actually affirmatively acting to protect the value of your wealth so that you didn't get taxed on exchanging your wealth of dollars with your wealth of precious metals. I mean, the same thing is happening in Wyoming, Tennessee, Kansas, Louisiana, and a number of other states. And it's a growing movement, ladies and gentlemen, a growing movement. It's a growing movement for good reason. Because as long as government is weaponizing the IRS, we started out talking about the podcast, about the weaponization of the IRS. As long as government is weaponizing the IRS, then you should move some of your currency out of dollars, not because you're trying to skirt the IRS. I want to make that very clear, podcast listeners. I don't want the IRS knocking on my door. Not because you're not trying to pay the IRS in accordance with American law, but because the IRS is being encouraged to be super aggressive to come after your money. And to me, if you can exchange gold and buy things with gold and buy things with silver and buy things with platinum, then you actually don't really need the bank, do you? I mean, all you need is a safe in your house, probably a gun too to protect the safe, and an alarm system to protect the safe. But that's really all you need. It needs to be full of really, really small coins, because obviously an ounce of gold is now, I've forgotten, it's at one point it was pushing $2,000 an ounce. Silver, I don't recall, but you need varying sizes of those coins and you need to hold them yourself. Then here's the question, podcast listeners. How would the US government even know what you had at that point? How would they know? They would have no idea. The United States government would have no idea actually how much money you have saved. And then what's the IRS going to do? Come to you and say, well, Mr. Fisher, we're coming to audit you. This is, of course, is the current way. We're coming to audit you because last year you saved money in the bank and you made $5,000 from interest in the bank. And that interest is taxable, which it is, by the way. Conversely, you have a safe full of gold and silver little tiny coins instead of having the cash in the bank. And what is the IRS going to do? Well, Mr. Fisher, we're going to audit you because you didn't pay taxes on the appreciation of the gold and the silver. It's like, well, wait a minute. Why am I paying taxes on the appreciation of my money anyway? Because when I put that money in the bank and I'm saving it, I already paid taxes on that money. But now you're taxing me on the money that I'm making on the money, which the states are now saying, some states are saying, we're not going to tax you anymore on gold and silver, whether it be sales taxes when you buy it with dollars or when it appreciates in value. Kind of interesting, right? I mean, I think it's super interesting because this is the way it should be. And this shows us how disconnected we are from government and how disconnected government is from us, in that we've been accepting this nonsense for so many years. The idea that we're paying taxes on our savings, on the income that we make on our savings. I want to make that clear. Okay, now that's fine. I'm okay with capital gains taxes on stocks, right? Because you're buying a piece of a company and you're buying it for $10 and then you sell the piece of company and let's say it's now worth $100. I'm okay with that. But when you're actually using something that is more stable in terms of monetary value than the dollar, which is gold and silver, by stable, I'm not saying it doesn't go up and down, but I'm saying it's not going to be as scary. It's always going to have some value. Whereas the dollar, there's a sense that it's not going to have any value, or that they're going to come after those dollars. So it's kind of an interesting trend that's happening in the States. And it just shows you the incredibly brilliant way that our founders set up the Constitution by giving the states the power. And of course, the federal government doesn't want that. The Democrats who run the federal government, the Democrats who are in the bureaucracy who run the federal government, want to do everything they can to take away states' rights. And we've talked about that many times, like, for example, For the People Act, where they're literally trying to take over elections, a federal takeover of elections.